Can I send you, I have a, no, nothing? I didn't send it to you? Yeah, I was supposed to have sent you a PowerPoint. Pardon me? I can. Did it not go through? Pardon me? It may not have gone. I had a crash this afternoon, so I may have gotten stuck.
Testing, testing. Testing, testing.
Yeah, no, in the past, though, it was a problem in the public figure, but I don't know.
Have we gone live yet, Sarah? Go. Okay, we're live. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting of Monday, September 27th, 2021. We will open the meeting with the Canadian National Anthem, so please stand. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to welcome all members of council, staff, and members of the public to our meeting tonight. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Should we? Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, motion to accept the agenda. Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Massey, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the agenda of the regular meeting of Council on Monday, September the 27th, 2021.
Thank you. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Massey, that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as circulated. Regular meeting of Council, September 13, 2021. Special meeting of Council, September 15, 2021. And Committee of the Whole, September 22, 2021.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried, none opposed. Okay, moving on to delegations. I'd like to welcome for the OPP update, new Inspector Mark Hemerick. You want to entertain us, Malcolm, or? Yeah, Councillor Manley.
Just a quick update. I just had some calls in the last month or so from residents of the fourth concession over some concern of speeds on that road, particularly between Dorney and County Road 30, stretch or whatever. So, appreciate that. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, staff, councillors. For those of you that I have not had the pleasure of meeting, which is most everybody in the room, I've only spoken with Mr. Mayor. You and I have only had the opportunity to speak once on the phone.
Yes.
A very early morning phone call.
Yeah.
And I'm glad this is on. Glad this is on different circumstances. But thank you very much for having us this evening. The purpose of our visit this evening is to speak to you about our mobile crisis response team. We're going to get into a little bit of the history behind the team, how it came to be, some of the goals and some of the successes. I can tell you right now that at the end of the meeting, I will be looking for two things from yourself, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. Number one would be an endorsement of support for the program. And number two would be a letter of support, which I will be presenting to Health East, to the CEO. Health East is the new LHIN, so they've renamed all the health teams within Ontario. So our former Champlain LHIN is now referred to as Health East, which I would be presenting to Health East to ensure, first of all, demonstrate the support that we have behind the program. But secondly, and most importantly, is to secure stable base funding from the Ministry of Health for the program. So what is Police Mental Health Collaboration Response Model? So it's a partnership between police and a mental health service provider. So in SDNG, the OPP has paired up with the Cornwall Community Hospital, where they provide us with a mental health professional that is either a social worker, or in our case at the moment, it is a mental health, it is a nurse that specializes in mental health. So we formed this partnership back in 2020, and the program came to fruition in October 2020. Several different revenue streams or funding streams were attempted. We went through grants, we asked Health, the former LHIN, to support it, and we spoke with our variety of, with our three hospitals which are in the area, so that being the Glengarry Memorial, Winchester, and Cornwall Community Hospital. We were turned down. We are extremely fortunate that Constable Jim Blanchette and Staff Sergeant Simon Hardy do not take no for an answer and are very resilient. Some of you may have been present at the United Counties when they presented on the motion to have the United Counties fund the program for a one-year trial period. I know that there was a lot of debate surrounding the program. A lot of people felt very strongly that the $120,000 the OPP and the hospital were asking for to fund this program of resources from the counties, but I will say not an appropriate resource of county resources, because frankly, this is a health problem and it should be funded by the Ministry of Health. I agree with all of those things, and that is what brings me here before you this evening. So again, after some hot debate, and there were certainly some very, very strong advocates, and we are very fortunate that those advocates were very convincing to County Council. County Council did agree to fund the program for a one-year trial basis with a very generous $120,000. So, so some of the goals, connecting community members with mental health services. So the primary goal of this program is pairing one police officer up with one community-based mental health professional. And the primary goal is to serve members of the public that are in an acute crisis, and to ensure that there is no further harm to themselves or any other members of the public. The other goal is to provide those that might be not suffering an urgent mental health crisis, but are suffering from a mental health illness, and provide them with a community-based health assessment. As I'm sure you're all aware, not only from a cost-effective means, but also from a practical one, that community-based health is the most effective way of delivering health, right? We all know that, right now our system is lacking family doctors, and that our emergency rooms have become the de facto for many families. But then when most of us grew up in the area, I know I grew up in Cornwall, that we all had a family doctor. I didn't go to the ER every time I got tonsillitis, right? I called up my family doctor, who could either solve it by the phone or with a quick visit. This is the same principle, right? Where we are treating people, or we are assisting people directly within the community with a community-based assessment. And based on that assessment, the nurse or the social worker is able to connect the client with further community-based services. If the need is such where the police and the nurse determine after that community-based assessment that an apprehension under the Mental Health Act is necessary, this is at which time the police officer and the nurse will accompany that person, and they will provide a involuntary transportation as well to the hospital, and they will connect them with the services within the emergency department for those most acute cases. So I'd like to pass it on now to Acting Staff Sergeant Malcolm McPherson, whom, as I've heard at the beginning of the meeting, you are all a little more familiar with. And Malcolm is going to speak about some of the practical applications surrounding the program. He's also going to speak about a firsthand account in regards to one of our more proud success stories. So I'll pass it over to Staff Sergeant McPherson.
Malcolm, if I can ask you to speak at the microphone, just they won't be able to hear you on Facebook. Thank you.
So some of the community benefits of this program, it's immediately connecting people suffering from mental health crisis with services. What services they should be going to. And one of the benefits of having an RN out with one of the officers is many of the mental health issues that we deal with are medication-based. So when you have a nurse who has an extensive background in mental health issues and the exposure they've had to medication, their opinion can mean a lot when they're talking to a GP where a lot of the medications sorry, got a brain cramp, who write the script for administration of the medication. So immediately there's a benefit to having a nurse. There's a decreased number of repeat interactions, and this is our main goal. Is we don't want a two-person police car showing up to somebody's house every time they're called. So prior to this program, there's really only a couple of avenues for us. It's either it's an apprehension and we bring them to the hospital, or it's not and we walk away. With the MCRT team, they show up, they can make an assessment of what services are required there. Does this person need to go to the hospital, or can I actually wait until tomorrow? Or get them set up with the services right then and there. And a lot of this is done by a phone call, and it's made through the connections that the MCRT team has. Overloading the emergency room with mental health patients is a decreased time that officers are in the waiting room. So a lot of the times, I'm not sure if any of you understand the process that we have to go through when we apprehend somebody. So we bring them into the waiting room, and they have to see a doctor before anything else can happen. So having internal connections can decrease the waiting times from 3, 4, I've sat there as long as 8, 9 hours with a mental health patient. So this has come down to, I think we're at an hour now. Whereas before this program started, our average time was just under 3 hours. That's a two-man car sitting there with a mental health patient for 3 hours. That's the average. Any officer that comes in here can give you numerous times where it's been 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours sitting there. Reduced officer compassion fatigue. This is where a lot of the officers deal with the same people over and over and over again. And with the MCRT team, if they can hook people up with the proper program right away, the proper services, you don't have the same officers repeating every day the same call over and over again. And compassion fatigue is it can be an issue amongst officers or anyone for that matter. Which in turn, another benefit is officer wellness. And it provides officers a system to help the people that we're dealing with navigate through. I already spoke about diversion from busy, costly emergency departments, reduction of healthcare costs, increased capacity for community mental health and addictions to serve populations. Other issues that we find when we're dealing with people with mental health issues, sometimes it's not a medical medication. It doesn't have to do with the medication that they're on, but the outside the system, the medications they're using, whether that be hard drugs or alcohol, or so we can put them in touch with the right addiction counselors or the right addiction program. And this is, it's been a collaboration for positive change. We've had numerous positive instances of feedback from the community. The officers are really buying into this. And it's not guys with 5 or 6 years on. And they're buying into this. You know you've got something that means something. So the local success story for the story, I'm going to refer to this person as Emily. So prior to Emily's interaction with our MCRT team, there was over 120 calls to her specifically. So these are 2 officer calls, a lot of man hours, and obviously she wasn't getting the help that she needed. And So these would be sometimes apprehensions, sometimes go there, okay, doesn't need to be apprehended, so you leave. She was referred to the situation table. I'm not sure does everybody here know what the situation table was? After she was referred, we were still getting calls there. The family was struggling. And when the MCRT team was created, they went to the next call involving her. They connected her with the services through the mental health nurse. And since that point, we've had 0 calls with her. So we've gone from amassing 120 calls with this individual and down to 0. These services also hooked up her family with support programs for them. So something else that it's a ripple effect when you're dealing with mental health issues is the toll it takes on the family, friends, not just the police or the community programs, but anybody that has a close connection to them. So, am I doing this one or? Okay, so where are we now? Where do we want to be? So after, as the inspector mentioned earlier, Jim Blanchette and Simon Hardy put a lot of time and effort over years to get this program up and going. Right now, we've got a mental health nurse that works from Monday to Friday with our officers, and over the weekend, we've got 2 part-time social workers, so that covers us 7 days a week. And on the weekend, the hours are adjusted, so we go later into the night than we do during the week. And now we're working on getting stable base funding from the Ministry of Health to maintain this program. So when you look at the workload, it's not just about mental health calls. So the blue section is follow-ups from OPP referral. So those are follow-ups from our own officers, for referrals from our own officers to our MCRT team. That they may be at a call or receive information from the community, and they'll refer it to our MCRT team. So these are the follow-ups. The gray at the top, those are attended calls for service. That gray at the top would increase dramatically without the MCRT team and officers referring individuals to the program. They don't deal with just mental health calls. It's if there's any type of mental health component. It could come across to us as a trouble with a youth call, a family dispute, or the elderly. If the officers get there and they determine that, okay, it's not just a trouble with a youth call, it may so the nurse and the officer will set them up with the proper program. Or the elderly, it could be you get there and it could be Alzheimer's. So they wind up setting them up with a proper program. They try to take take as much as they can from the frontline officers to free them up for other police duties that don't involve a mental health component. So savings, this is where we start talking about hospital wait hours. So from September of 2018 to January 2019, our average time in the emergency room was 2.9 hours. And since the implementation of the program, this has been reduced to 1. So these are 2 officer calls, and it frees 2 officers up for more proactive policing, whether that's investigating crime or traffic complaints. Now, for the statistics, I think I'll hand this over to you.
Thank you, Malcolm. So I'm just going to speak about the savings. One of the very important things to note is when we have that reduction down to an hour, that took place in 4 months. And I can tell you now, we didn't bring the statistics up to date because we wanted to make sure that the OPP's database and the hospitals that we collect were matching. And we like to make sure the data we provide people is precise. So that's why we use January. But you can obviously see that that is a significant change in wait times. I can also tell you that our mental health workers that work with us will tell you that an hour is absolutely unacceptable because they work for the hospital. So when they go in and they do the triage or see the triage nurse and they go see the ER physician and speak that language with them, they're telling us that an hour is still too long to be waiting. So, and you can see how, as Staff Sergeant McPherson referred to, that's not only a savings in officer time, but that is also opening up space for people who might have a life-threatening emergency. So we not only save officer time, but improves the client experience because they spend less time waiting. Has significantly improved our working relationship with our emergency department partners and reduces overall wait times for the rest of our partners. So since the inception of the program, we have seen a 42.5% decrease in involuntary apprehensions under the Mental Health Act. That is a pretty significant number, and it's going to get even more significant in the next slide. That reduction is because we are able to provide, as I said in the beginning, that community-based assessment directly. And we have a mental health professional who is able to help officers like Malcolm and I, who were never trained in mental health. It was either apprehend or don't apprehend. And most of the time, I can tell you from my personal experience, I certainly won't put words in Malcolm's mouth, but that my experience was better err on the side of caution because I'm not a doctor. And that wasn't the right way to be proceeding, but the limited training and tools I had told me that's what I should be doing. So our diversions are up 45.3%. And as you've clearly seen, our wait times are down to less than an hour. Now, the next slide I'm going to talk about relates directly to the financial component. Because as I'm sure council understands, Sarah, you probably understand better than anybody, is that money talks, right? Money absolutely talks. Probably the most expensive thing that we have, that we spend more money per person on in Ontario is healthcare. I would probably say the second thing is education. And if you have seen the municipal policing bill, I could tell you that we are not cheap. So when we talk about the savings component, I'm going to qualify that with a couple of things. The first one being is that I do not see this as the most important component. The most important component of this program is the service that we are providing to those clients. It is that destigmatization and it is that humanization and that providing that true health care that they really need. The second one is the families. Because if anybody in this room has ever had a family member who has been affected by mental illness, you know that it has a tremendous ripple effect and it severely affects the families. But once again, the financial implications of programs like this and the financial savings that I can demonstrate can speak very loudly as well. So I only used 4 metrics to come up with some of these numbers. That was 1 emergency doctor room's consulting fee, the hospital psychiatrist consulting fee, 1 nurse and 2 constables. Those are the only 4 metrics I used. I'm sure that if anybody of you know about hospital administration, police administration, or justice administration, I probably could have taken 30 or 40 additional metrics and added it to them. So when we look at the total savings, I'm only looking at a very, very small part of the pie, but a very important part. So before the inception of the mobile community response team, based on our calls for service and those 4 metrics, it was costing the total system about $187,225 a year. Right? Those are base salaries as well. There's no overtime calculated in there. For my second number, from the inception of the MCERT and calculating the 1 hour time savings, we reduced that cost savings by $96,000. That's in 4 months that we demonstrated. When we look at the previous slide with the 45% decrease in diversions on involuntary apprehensions, that total savings back to the system comes back to just under $120,000. So the county's initial investment of $120,000 into the system is calculated in there. So if you look at it correctly, it's actually a $240,000 savings. So pretty significant for a program that's been up and running less than 1 year. So I've already stated is I don't believe that this program should be funded by the United Counties. It is a health problem. Secondly, I do not feel that it is the police's sole responsibility to be mental health care workers. This was done through a de facto. We are now de facto. It is part of our day-to-day duties, but it is not one of our core mandates. Our core mandates are public safety, traffic safety, and reduced victimization. Mental health doesn't fall into there, but it has become a de facto one. The other thing I don't believe in is defunding the police. I believe in properly funding the police. What I believe in more is properly funding social programs such as these when you see a collaborative effort that go to supporting the mental health and well-being of the people we serve. So, in conclusion, across the province, mental health is noted to be the #1 priority risk factor across any community in Ontario surveyed. And the MCERT model is a proven model which shows that it improves not only the client experience, decreases stigmatization, reduces hospital wait times, produces lower wait times in total, but provides total system savings. Our county residents, our families, and our friends deserve the best response and care when they are in times of crisis, which speaks to the continued need for mobile crisis response time. So I would like to, once again, in conclusion, thank Staff Sergeant Simon Hardy, who couldn't be here this evening, and PC Jim Blanchette for their incredible effort to get this program up and running. I would also like to thank Staff Sergeant Malcolm McPherson, who is making his first official presentation with me. I only told him about 3 hours before the presentation and showed him a copy of the PowerPoint as well. So he has done incredibly well. There's nothing from the fire to the furnace, so. So, does anybody have any questions?
Well, first off, I just want to thank you for giving us this presentation. And yeah, I'm both Deputy Mayor and I sit on County Council, and we too argued that it probably wasn't a county issue. And we asked for Jim and Simon to look for other avenues. And when they came back to County Council, and we were pretty much the last stop for this, we all saw the value of it. We understand the value. We've seen that in the community paramedic program that we have going, where you're going to the people that fill our emergency rooms and our ambulances, when they're just looking for, they just want some attention. And these people were stopping in at, there was one lady, I think she was, I think it was 20 times a checking in on her and seeing how things were going. So I do believe in this program, and I really, I support you guys, and we will, I hopefully with council, will support your presentation at Health East. But know that it's a great program, and you guys have done a great job with it.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Your support is very much appreciated. I can tell you that my dream would be for Bill Lester and I to be able to get together and combine our community paramedic program with the mobile community response team. I know he and I have had an initial discussion about it, but that would be my dream, because I really think that that would provide a total wraparound service for the clientele of SDNG.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to second the mayor's comments. Jim and Simon certainly worked hard on making this happen, and like you said, I've heard nothing but good things about this program from all kinds of social service agencies out there, who of course are in touch with, individuals at different levels than perhaps you are, and I'm really glad to see, because that was one of the comments that county council made. They said, we will support this program 100% for this year, but we'd really like you to be able to look at other ways of funding. And sure enough, you're coming and you're doing that. I have tremendous positive hope for this program into the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Massey.
I echo my Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor comments. I also had thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Malcolm. A few months ago, I don't know, Jacob, if you remember this, our bylaw officer had went to one of our residents, and he was on a nervous breakdown, and he, I guess, won't name names or anything to do with it, but and then our bylaw officer stopped at the mill and mentioned that to me, and I said, geez, we have to do something. And so I think he contacted the OPP, I think, at the time, and the day after, I think somebody showed up with a nurse, and it completely diffuses it. Like the guy was ready to crack completely. And it gave me such a good feeling that there was somebody for him, because before he gets somebody hurt or hurt himself, and because there's a lot of people that have a hard time out there. So I'm really glad that this is going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I haven't had any experience with this directly, but I know for a fact that there is a massive need for this, and I have heard feedback on the program through different avenues, and I'm all for letter of support, and I think we can give you to support getting funding from Health East. I think, to my mind, it's a program that needs to continue, and there's massive benefit to the community in all kinds of metrics, as you illustrated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Councilor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question, just wondering, if the funds were available through Health East or other possibilities, would you see an expansion of that program?
Absolutely. So currently, I was actually in contact with Health East this morning, their interim CEO, Cynthia Martineau, and Jeanette Dispatti, the president and CEO of Cornwall Community Hospital, and I will be meeting with her and presenting with her before County Council meets in November for funding requests to find out from Health East. Right now, actually, Staff Sergeant Hardy, one of the reasons he couldn't be here this evening is he has literally been working himself crazy. He has applied for a grant for an expansion of the program. And that is being done through a funding grant. And what the grant will allow us to do is expand the program. If we are successful, allow the expansion of the program and for us to collect further data and metrics to hopefully, once we get that stable base funding, and I say we're going to get it, we'll be able to show further data and bring that stable base funding even further up.
Thank you. Any further questions of Councilor Noble?
Thank you again. Two things. I was just curious, domestics, a friend of mine was on the force for a short period of time and just, like you said, kept seeing the same people over and over again. So she switched to nursing, so at least she could help them. Still seeing the same people over and over again, but this program would deal with something like that as well when you enter a home.
What we've done with our officers is, so when we went back to that graph, so if I bring it back up, I'll just. Heard me speak enough today? So if we go back to this graph, so the section in blue are actually our officer referrals. So those are where the officers are attending regular calls for service. Domestics, family violence, could be anything. And they suspect there might be an element of mental health involved. They will make a referral to the mobile crisis response team to follow up with the parties involved. That could be through a phone call, could be through an email, could be through an in-person visit. What they'll do as well, though, is they will search their databases. So the nurse will search the health database and we will search our police one to look for commonalities before they go to the house. And if there is an element of mental health that is believed, they will attend, speak with the parties involved and try and connect them with services.
And then my second question, do we need to get on our MPP? Do we need to get on Christine Elliott? Like, what else can we do to help you guys find money?
So our first step was this summer. I had the chance to meet with the minister in charge of mental health and addiction services himself. The hospital CEOs, myself, and Cornwall Police got to meet with them. They are very much on board about supporting these programs. They realize the value of these programs. For Health East, the Health East is fully on board to support these programs. It is simply providing them with our business case and letters of support. I know for the North, I always get this mixed up, so you will have to give me is it still, it's going to escape me. I was the detachment commander in Hawkesbury, and her name is going to escape me. Is it still Amanda Simard that represents for, yes, for North Glengarry? So I know in Hawkesbury, we had Amanda's full support because I built a program from the ground up there. She has a little less favor with the current government. But as far as the rest of the counties, South Glengarry and the rest of the counties or the rest of the municipalities, it is actually Jim Brownell who organized that meeting with the minister. So we have his full support. I was speaking with Eric Duncan this afternoon, and Eric has his full support. Eric has his full support behind the program as well. So they'll be providing us letters of support for the program as well that we can provide to Health East.
Perfect, thank you. Final question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need to bring this up, Malcolm, because you were saying, are there any other issues? We have a significant concern in Maxville with regards to speeding. We've got some new families in town, and these kids are walking to and from school. They're having to cross Main Street, and cars are coming flying through town that are just commuters early in the morning when these kids are getting to school, and similarly when the kids are coming back from school. And it is a safety concern, and we'd really like to see at least some presence, hand out a few tickets perhaps, and maybe that'll give these people who are flying through town something to think about. Is that a possibility? It's really Main Streets. That's the problem, and there are lots of kids on the streets at these times, and like I say, they have to cross the road, so it is considered to be concerning safety-wise. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Inspector Hemrick and Staff Sergeant McPherson, for attending tonight. We appreciate all the valuable information. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're moving on to staff reports, Administrative Department. COVID-19 vaccine policy. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noble, that council direct staff to draft a COVID-19 vaccination policy to be brought back at the next meeting of council.
Thank you. CEO Huskinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report in front of council this evening is to do with a COVID-19 vaccination policy. The county and the lower tier CIOs have been working together on drafting a policy. We're looking at doing a policy that would be consistent across SDG to make it very much implemented, as well as what's recommended by Dr. Paul, the Chief Medical Officer of EUHU. So what I'm looking for this evening from council is just some direction to continue to work on that draft policy. I know that we have been asked by staff what we're doing, because as you're aware, we have through recreation, I know that Anne did give an update at the committee of the whole. We have been implementing the restrictions with the vaccinations at the arena and the dome. So this is another part of what we are mandated to do through the Ontario Reg, which I referenced in my report.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. There are none opposed. Okay, moving on to Treasury Department bylaw.
The Council of the Township of North Glengarry received staff report number 2021-29, and that council adopted bylaw 37/2021, being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing upon serial debentures in the principal amount of $520,000 toward the cost of a pumper tanker for Maxville, and that bylaw 37/2021 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted in open council this 27th day of September 2021.
Thank you, Councillor. Welcome, Kim.
On August 9th, Council approved borrowing from Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation, otherwise known as OILC, for a pumper tanker for Maxville in the amount of $520,000. Those documents were provided to OILC and the debenture has been approved. The bylaw is just a formality to borrow through a debenture for a 20-year term at an interest rate of 2.5%. Basically, once these documents have been signed, they go to legal counsel, and our legal counsel reviews the documentation and has to give a legal opinion, and then he requests the release of funds for the pumper tanker, which will occur on October 15th. Average cost will be around $38,000 over time, but it's starting at about $38,000 a year for this loan. And the loan expense will be funded through the tax base.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to Planning, Building, and Bylaw Enforcement, Zoning Bylaw Amendment Number Z12/2021. Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wensing, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry adopt zoning bylaw Z12/2021, and that bylaw Z12/2021 be read a first, second, third time and enacted in open council the 27th day of September 2021.
Thank you, Councillor. Welcome, Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this zoning bylaw amendment is for 2910 Lockhill Road, also known as County Road 21. It's owned by Daniel Blondin and Nicole Geoffrion. It's a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the property from restricted ag, so the restricted ag zone on that property, to rezone it to special exception restricted ag to permit a secondary dwelling on the subject lands. We have received no additional comments, nothing from public. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. Zoning bylaw amendment Z13, 2021, Counselor Wensing.
Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry adopt zoning bylaw Z13, 2021, and that 2021.
Thank you, Counselor. Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Roland and Son Plumbing and Heating bought the property unknowingly that the property was zoned institutional, so it's located at 17 Main Street South in Maxville, right in town. So they applied to change the zoning from institutional to special exception local commercial and to add the use of a restaurant as a permitted use. We have received no other concerns from the public.
Okay, thank you. Questions from members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. Thank you, Jacob. Moving on to Fire Department, Open Air Burn Bylaw 36-2021, Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Massey, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry adopt the new open air burn bylaw 36-2021, and that bylaw 36-2021 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted in open council this 27th day of September 2021, and that bylaw 48-2019 be rescinded.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The fire chief couldn't be here this evening. The committee of the whole, the fire chief did present the burn bylaw. The only change was to make a change to extend the ag burn season from October 15th from the November 1st timeline, and that is what is presented in the report to council this evening.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. Moving on to Public Works Department, Blue Box Regulation Municipal and First Nation Initial Report. Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Massey, that council accept and endorse the attached initial report for submission to Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority.
Thank you, Councillor. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. So RIPRA has announced earlier this year the transition deadlines and the initial report deadline, which that's what this is that you have attached or in front of you. So our deadline is this week for the initial report. It's really just information of what our current baseline is for our recycling program. And then our next deadline will be that transition report, which will require a little more work, and that's not until August of 2023. Our transition deadline still, as laid out by RIPRA, is January 1st of 2025. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's curious here, the questions that they asked with regards to whether or not schools and hospitals and things, whether they actually recycled. But I thought that the schools did recycle here in North Glengarry. Do they not?
They just don't come through us, right? Go ahead, Councillor Manley, you have some.
Yeah, the schools do, the schools that I've been associated with do recycle. There is a recycling program within the school. There are recycle bins on the school facility, but it's not handled through the municipality.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Okay, well, that's good news. I'm glad to hear that. I thought that they did. Is that some information that should be presented as part of this, so that they don't think that our schools don't recycle?
So through you, Mayor McDonald, to Deputy Mayor Williams, this is our municipal recycling program, information only. Yeah, that's because we did ask for that clarification. There were several workshops that RIPRA had put on prior to getting this form to fill out. We only just got the form in August to fill out, so it is just our program and our baseline that we're doing as a municipality. I'm not sure how they're rolling out to other ICI facilities.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. There are none opposed. Okay, moving on to Municipal and First Nations Automotive Materials Services Agreement. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noble, that Council of the Township of North Glengarry authorizes the mayor and CEO/clerk to execute the Municipal and First Nations Automotive Materials Services Agreement.
Thank you. Tara.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. So through you, Mayor McDonald, to council, there will be several producer responsible organization agreements coming through over the next while as we are transitioning. So this is just one of the first ones that you'll see. So it's really updating those agreements that we have with these pros in place. So this is for the automotive fluids, oils, antifreeze, things like that. So the agreement hasn't changed. Other than there's a few more restrictions, there'll be less sort of money coming our way. But this is just one of many that will be coming.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. Okay, moving on to municipal drain request, east part of Lot 27, Concession 8, former Township of Lochiel in the Township of North Glengarry. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Madden, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry direct staff to draft a municipal drain agreement with the owner of the east part of Lot 27, Concession 8.
Okay, Tara.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor McDonald and CAO, can you just pull up the actual map so they can look at that while I talk? That might just be easier, please. So there's the map showing the location of lot, and if you scroll down slightly, just to give you perspective first before I speak to it. So it actually shows the road, and where the red would be where the mutual drain would be. So it's the yellow property on the far left. So he's not directly connected to the watercourse or to a current drain. So when staff reviewed it, the best option that we're in agreement with is to move forward with a mutual agreement drain instead of a petition drain. It will be more cost effective. We're okay with it. Both roads that it will run along would be, well, they're both currently green roads. So the situation is the landowner has surface water. The land has been tiled. It currently goes into a pit on the side of the green road. There's been some flooding issues currently because it doesn't directly connect to the watercourse or an existing drain. So to run it along or improve the ditch along those two green roads to connect it to the watercourse to let it outlet will improve the situation. Some of the challenges with the petition drain is time, and we need an interim solution either way. So it could take a couple of years for a petition drain. So that is part of the reason for recommending a mutual agreement drain. So the landowner, if tonight you agree that we can move forward with this, the landowner will get an engineer to provide the design. So all the elevations and specifications associated with the construction of this, and it would be at their cost. And then we would have a mutual sort of agreement put in place, and then you would see that at a later date come forward for your approval.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For clarification, the diagonal, that's an existing water course that's cutting through that field?
Yeah, I think the legend is on there as well. If you scroll a little bit down.
So
Sorry.
will that be eliminated?
No, so the water course will stay. And the branch, the McCrae branch will stay.
Okay.
And the current, so we're not changing any of the current, or we're not proposing to change any of the current drains. What will happen in the future is that we would have to have maintenance on the McCrae drain or the main drain. The engineer's report will have to be updated prior to that maintenance to reevaluate and reassess everything.
The main drain being the one that would be created?
The main drain exists, So Main and McRae Drain are two drains that currently exist. So the engineer's assessment to report for those two drains after, if this goes in, like if we proceed with this mutual drain agreement, in the future, there will be, those two drains will have to be reassessed because we will have changed some of the water flow.
Subsequent?
Thank you. I'm curious, what we're proposing here is essentially starting just on the other side of the Green Road from something that exists.
Coming off of the yellow property or the property in question. It currently just goes into the side of our Green Road and sits
Okay.
in a pit.
So
And
I'm just
Just
curious
does.
why we don't just go along a little bit and connect to the existing drain across the Green Road.
see, I actually haven't been on site for this one, so I can't talk to what's exactly in the field. So I can follow up, I can ask why the drainage superintendent didn't propose that. I'm not sure what restriction is there.
Okay, it seems like a curious thing to me that.
Okay, so my question is there a time on this that it needs to be passed now, or can we defer to the next meeting to get that information?
Yeah, so thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. I can definitely bring more information back for the next meeting. It will delay it because we did want to get the design moving forward so we could get something in place before we go into the winter season. However, it's only 2 weeks.
Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know where that drain is, and I got call from one of the neighboring properties a couple of years ago. There was this major issues there. So I think we should proceed with caution there because there's apparently a drain that has been covered and stuff like that. So we got to do due diligence here and not create something. There's a lot of problems there with the neighbors. So just heads up on that.
Councillor Noble.
Yes, I would definitely prefer a deferral on this. I really want to make sure that the neighbors are, I think Malcolm's brain cramp is
Are
contagious.
notified or?
Yeah, involved. This has been going on for a couple of years. It was originally intended to drain out the other end, and we fought this a couple of years ago, so I'm a little blank on what we talked about back then. I've seen this ditch. I've been there a couple of times. I've seen the amount of water that is pooled there. I have seen the flooding. I have seen the, pardon my harshness, but the destruction of this Green Road to get to some of this. And the Higginbottom is not big enough. The drain is not big enough. The McRae branch is not big enough. And we had talked about putting it out to the main culvert on the old military road. Is that what this red line represents to get to the existing municipal drain?
So through you, Mayor McDonald, so what the drainage superintendent had shared with me is that this is going to eventually outlet into the water course. So I'll get more details from him, obviously.
Okay,
Because
and-
I don't know that history.
Everyone in favor of a deferral?
Yep.
And yeah, and the
Okay.
staff,
Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, if you could please also find out what the impact of this would be on the Green Road.
Okay. All those in favor of deferral? Motion is carried. There are none opposed. Thank you. Thank you, Tara. And moving on to consent agenda, Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wensink, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives the items from the consent agenda for information purposes only.
Any questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried, none opposed. Notice of motion, next regular public meeting of council is Tuesday, October 12th here. Question period, are there any questions from the floor?
I just wanted to find out if council passed allowing St. Vincent to do more than one dump of roof.
Did they pass that? We went through, I spoke with the CAO, and because of COVID, they've taken on extra amounts of garbage, so we told them that they could increase to 2 a week until such time that they clear up their backlog. Okay, closed session. We have a closed session business tonight. And we're going to proceed in closed session to legal matter as it deals with advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. They may be discussed in closed session under Section 239(2) of the Ontario Municipal Act and adopt the minutes of the Municipal Council closed session meeting of September 13th. So we will take a 2-minute break and reconvene. So I'd like to thank all members of council, staff, and the public for joining us this evening. And just a reminder that September 30th is the Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And just please take some time to reflect on issues that have affected our community, the natives have faced. The township itself will have a flag raising that day, as well as we're encouraging our staff to wear orange. So thank you and have a great evening. So we'll take a 2-minute break. Thank you.